It's so moist.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Functional Meatheads. I'm Mark DeSalvo.
No, Froilan Sanchez.
I don't know where the accent came from, but
Right on.
yeah, Froy and I have been. There's been a lot to talk about lately, and I've been full of thoughts lately of like I'm gonna open the show with this, and we need to talk about this and this, and then of course I get here and I got nothing. Can't remember any of them, of
Projects
course.
though.
But yeah, we have a lot of. We'll might as well skip no or make no small talk because we have a lot of projects to discuss today.
You
And
project.
excuse me.
We have a lot of projects to project.
Oh yes, yes. I thought you were saying you're projecting on me.
No.
Yeah. So anyway, would you like to lead us off, or should I get started?
We'll go. Let me lead off because yours is a little bit more in depth. So I did everything I told you not to do. So I pulled my hamstring a little bit, just a tiny bit, on last weekend, but I was able to play. Towards the end, I just played goalkeeper, and then I was really. This is like a life lesson. So I was really, really good. I took care of it all weekend. Didn't do legs on leg day. Epsom salt
Leg
every
day.
day. Stretched it. Did everything I needed to do in terms of putting my framework into it. In terms of like, okay, I'm gonna wake up early on Sunday, get an hour warm up, do everything, ball, foam roll, everything is in. But the simple fact is that it wasn't ready, and I try to do all these magic tricks to make it ready. Foam rolling. I even put like Ben Gay on it. Try to buy a little bit better compression shorts. Everything I could do to just play it. But now that I think about it, it was just like building a bridge to nowhere.
Hmm.
So of course I tore it up even worse. Like I could barely sit. I could barely sit, barely stretch, anything. It was just mad pain. Um, so I ended up having to go buy some really expensive real compression shorts, which nobody makes anymore. Um, so I had to go buy some really expensive compression shorts to help with the healing, just to get it more blood to the area, et cetera, et cetera. So lesson learned. The body will tell you when it's ready. If something happens, even though you really want to do it, it's like I've been telling you, you have to pay attention to it. And I kind of broke my own rules, and I paid the price for it. So now I'm out for 3 weeks. I should have just been out for 2 weeks, but now I'm out for three plus. Maybe you never know. So we'll see.
It's always
Take care of your. Don't. I guess my frame was like, don't think that all these things we tell you will work in terms of there's nothing you can do to mask something that's off. You know,
right.
kind of like a big difference would be like, all right, It's good that you do the limber 11 4 5 times a week, but you're eating McDonald's every day.
Yeah. I mean, I think that what you're talking about comes kind of back to mindfulness, like just about
Yeah.
everything on this show, because it's interesting. If you've never had an injury before, or if you have an injury to an area you've never injured before, or you're feeling something new, uh, it's often going to be really confusing because in a way you don't really know how to be mindful of it. And I don't know how many times you've hurt your hamstring ever, or if you've done, I don't. Basically, what I'm getting at is, I'll give you an anecdote here. Is that um, I never really had shoulder problems, but about a year ago, I remember I felt like kind of in that medial delt area on, I think it was my right shoulder. It felt a little tweaked, a little pulled, a little strained, and my body very clearly told me what I shouldn't be doing. So, a lot of overhead stuff or any kind of like lateral movement upwards from the waist, like the old-fashioned lateral raises with dumbbells. I wasn't doing any of that. That wasn't happening for me. But so I rested it. You do the natural thing. But I remember thinking to myself, I probably should be extra baby on it. Maybe this was maybe 10 to 14 days into it. Like I hadn't ceased movement because, for instance, I didn't have to stop riding my bike. I didn't have to stop doing a lot of different things. But um, I ended up, I was at jujitsu. It was early on when I first started jujitsu. And I was like, oh crap. I was like halfway into the class and I realized I was like, oh man, I probably shouldn't be here with the shoulder. I don't know how this is going to feel because we were doing some throws that I knew were going to involve it. And at first it felt a little tender, but by the end of class it felt great. So like in a very weird way, it brought like a new mindfulness to me of like, okay, that's what that injury feels like. You know that you can come back to it when it's at this point, and you know you need to test it when it might be at this point. And then the other side of that is this injury sucks. It feels horrible right now. I need to stay rested. You know, you kind of it's the moral of the story is the too long didn't read the cliff notes is basically you have to have some context for that mindfulness. You know what I mean? Otherwise, it's very foreign. You know, of
Yeah.
like you're just like, why do I hurt right now? It's very hurt. You know, and I have a lot of that going on kind of with me, which I'll get to in a little bit. But like, I,
Well, for me, it brought 2 points to light. It's like I was telling a client who's been hurt, and I was like, and I know sometimes people tend to use exercise as stress relief from work, and I'm like, this is the exact reason why you can't use stress relief, working out as stress relief because you get hurt, then game over. What are you gonna do? So
yeah,
brought that number one. I was using like that one. Playing soccer once a week is something I love to do. I sacrifice a lot to be able to do that. Um, I sacrificed my Saturday night to be able to play just because I love playing so much. So it showed me that I should probably find a league where I can play a little bit more often, number one. Number two,
hmm
it showed me that, so basically once a week I'm sprinting like a madman uphill in cleats. And it also showed that that's not something that you can do once a week without getting injured. I have to set my training to be able to do that. And so far, the only thing that I was kind of doing that was deadlifts and everything else, but that's not sprinting. So it tells me I got to throw one day of some intense, or at least get my body and the ability to prepare itself to be able to sprint on a more than once a week basis. If I'm going to play that hard, I have to do that. It kind of just brought this whole
do plyometrics.
yeah, plyometrics, anything like it brought a brainstorm of like, okay, what does this mean? Okay, what's going on here? Why am I always getting hurt? Why I switched to the cleats? It brought another dimension of something. So basically, I loved it so much, but I wasn't respecting it in terms of um, doing the prep for it. It was just something that I kind of wanted to keep casual, and I enjoyed doing it. But it just said, okay, I have to train like a soccer player if I want to play really good soccer. I can't just at the level that I want to play, and it's not pro. It just means I like to play hard. I don't want to cheat myself. So I have to throw in some training in there. That's mindfulness that has soccer as its main goal. So it brought up a couple of points, and so I'm going to look for another league so I can play more regularly, and I'm going to start throwing in some specific soccer training, so I can get in better condition for that. God knows I have a bunch of books on that, so I'm not too worried about it. But I think your issue is a little bit more pressing and more complex than mine in terms of what you're dealing with your saga with your ribs. So what went wrong? You went to go see somebody?
Yeah, I went to a physical therapist. I decided pretty soon after the podcast last week that uh, it just kind of the stars all kind of started to align. I realized, what I do really well is train people, and in the most classic of certifications, they'll tell you to know where your role ends, starts and ends, and that the physical therapist, a good one, plays a good role in identifying injuries or doing the basic bridge back to training like you want, like you just described, like being able to train to be a soccer player. I couldn't at my current state couldn't even do that. I have to bridge. There is that injury to training bridge that you need to go through, and that's where they're really vital. And I just said to myself, I need help with this. I know all of the different problems that could be at play, and I know all of the different exercises I could be doing to help. But as far as how that relates to working through an injury, I don't know how to put that together. I don't know when to stop, when pain is good, when pain is bad. So, but long story short, I basically I started asking around, and I had already known a few names from just being around the academy of people who were experienced in dealing with sports injuries. Because like the last thing I wanted to do was go to some physical therapist who's gonna just be dealing with elderly people who have trouble standing up, and they're just like, here, just heat it, and they throw you a heating pad for an hour. Um, so I went to a physical therapist, and I would encourage people to do it if they're in a prolonged kind of injury state, because and to do your research, to really do your research, because they're just like trainers. There can be a lot of bad ones, but I went to a great one, and the the diet, basically we go through this whole thing. I don't know if I should break it down chronologically, or how you want to hear it as a
I think
story.
everybody knows where you're at in the past, so now you're at the point where you wanted a little bit more help to get to the point where you could get back to
I
training.
meant actually like at the appointment.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
just important points.
Yeah, I mean, so the thing is that I kind of knew that there was probably a deeper issue, and when I had contacted the guy, he had mentioned to me, he says, I need to see you to properly evaluate you, but I would probably guess that you might have some issues with muscles in your back that attach to your ribs, um, just based on your history playing hockey, all through kind of like your growing up years, and you know always kind of being involved in sports that flex the hip and whatnot. So anyway, he sits me down, and within 10 seconds of just he just like has me just sit straight up, and he just pokes around on my back. Within, like I said, 10 seconds, he lands on like what's probably like somewhere in like that upper left lat, rear delt, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you got problems here." And he works the chain down, like he just taps, taps, tap, but he's like firm taps, like a good with his thumb, fingers, and he gets to this point, and I don't want to butcher the name, that's why I'm looking down at my phone here on my anatomy app, and he said, "Yeah, this is what I thought." He said, "You have a problem with your iliocostalis, and there's basically three of them in your back, because I've been studying these like the freaking like it's the word of God the past few days. Anyway, so they attach to your back from the attachment starts kind of down at the bottom of the spine, like kind of on the pelvis, I believe, and they all end in different spots, but they all attach to different parts on your ribs. So like the analogy he used was the grappling hook, that it's basically like this muscle has these fingers, and each finger kind of attaches to a different rib. And the moment he just put a little bit of pressure on it, it feels like that pain. When you're kind of foam rolling and you get on that tough spot.
Yeah.
It felt like he was rolling on a tough spot, and he like I said, he wasn't even spending a lot of time there. He was just really kind of massaging it out. And then he had me do a couple different activation tests to kind of test to see if that muscle really was that inactive on me, and basically came to the conclusion. Well, I mean, I'll spare some of the details, but he basically came to the conclusion that I had an overactive psoas when it came to matters of basically hunching down. That, in other words, the iliocostalis should be helping you bring your spine down, like hinging through the hips, but bringing it back up because it's a spinal erector muscle.
Mm-hmm.
But your psoas basically only can flex the hip, so it brings the leg and the hip closer to the spine, but the psoas isn't attached to the spine, so it's not going to move the spine. And mine are not working in perfect harmony. My psoas is doing a lot of work that at a certain level, in a certain position of flexion, that my iliocostalis could be helping out with. And a lot of people could have problems with it because the same muscle, because one of the big symptoms of it is a lot of like internal rotation of the shoulders, like that forward head and everything that comes with internal rotation.
So he's saying that your psoas is bringing your spine down to you, and your
your
iliocostalis can't handle it eccentrically.
Well, I don't believe that your psoas it doesn't attach to the spine, so it can't really ever bring the spine, but there's a moment when your iliocostalis, so I guess maybe when you're at a certain point of um, concentric or eccentric motion in it. I guess what I'm hypothesizing is that it should be taking over at the bottom. Like it should be able to split the load with the psoas when it hits a certain threshold, but mine's not. In
Maybe it
other
does.
words,
Psoas major attaches to the psoas major and minor attached to the lower lumbar spine.
oh, okay. Well, basically, it's the psoas is doing a lot more work than it should be, and it's kind of always it was also weak. There's that kind of paradox in with your
To me,
muscles.
what I think it's saying is like when people do, you put them on the ground and their feet are on the ground, they're doing crunches,
Hmm.
or like sit-ups, but they're using their psoas and not their core.
Right.
So I'm thinking what that does is when they jerk, like they go that really quick motion that kind of like brings the curve up, they're like ripping that part of their spine.
Yeah.
They're using that to pull themselves up. So I wonder if it was eccentrically, because if it's an erector spinae, it's supposed to bring you up.
Right.
So I
So,
wonder if it just can't handle a load eccentrically.
well, that's the thing is that it's with me, it's so shut off and weak that when it's moving down eccentrically, it's it's not able to hold my spine in the place it needs, so my chest and everything are collapsing.
You
I
have no
mean,
stability.
this is exacerbated by the fact that I've been now 6 weeks inactive, because of the
It's
injury. So, like it wasn't, and that's
real.
what he was trying to, and what he said, and it was sort of irrelevant to him, is he goes, listen, he goes, you might have always been like this, and that's why you injured your ribs, or you might have developed this weak iliocostalis because of your injury. He goes, either way, it's causing you a great deal of pain in your ribs, and so that's what we did, and he showed me through like activating it and doing different things how much it just expands your rib cage, and how much it and how crucial it is. Like um, it's a big part of scapular retraction that like we always talk about. Starrett, all those other people always talk about scapular retraction and how like you need to maintain that, to have your good posture, your expanded chest, that external rotation. And it's true, but I always felt, and I never could quite pinpoint it, and this is why I was really glad I went, is that I always felt like there was a muscle in me that it wasn't until I got more advanced with my strength training that I started to even notice the presence of this muscle. But I always noticed that there should be something below the lats, or kind of maybe in that thoracic, lower thoracic, and even down towards your lumbar. Like there should be something pulling on me more too, in the way the scapula pulls. Like what's in other words, like what's pulling on the scapula? There needs to be something lower. But I never felt that activation in me, and I always knew that was a problem, but I never could quite figure it out. And this feels like the missing link ever since he pinpointed that yesterday, and really went through it with me. So the
Sounds like something you need something. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
the interesting part is how to fix it. But go ahead. I want to hear what you had to say.
No, I'm thinking like I'm always thinking, okay, how am I gonna know? I'm the average person listening to this podcast, and now I want to know if my iliocostalis is activated or not.
Well, first of all, I would tell you don't be a
I want
hypochondriac.
to know like how can I, even if I don't think it's activated or whatever, how can I keep it limber? How can I keep it in a position so that I don't get to a point where I'm kind of screwed?
Well, one of the ways, like one of the courses of treatment, and it's kind of ongoing because him and I are in communication. But the three things he had me do were deep squats, very deep squats that activate your psoas and drive through the heels in order to really kind of feel it, and then also to activate your glutes, because I was noticing my glutes were really shut off from all of this inactivity. So I had to kind of get that going. The second one was front squats, actually, with just no weight on the barbell. But
That'll activate the iliocostalis, right?
yeah, because you need to use those erector muscles to stay up. So it's a very crucial exercise in
So
training.
he had a bar and everything there.
Oh, multiple. Dude, he had the dream gym. You should see this place. It's amazing. It's great.
Nice.
Yeah, it was an awesome facility.
Does PT out of there?
Yeah, just him. But he has and he also trains. I mean, he's a jiu-jitsu guy, so he trains a lot of jiu-jitsu guys, mixed martial artists, and then does physical therapy for all types of people.
Huh.
Really awesome space. It's really, really awesome. I'll tell you more about it off the air about how cool
Yeah.
some of the equipment was. But so was doing front squats, and then here's the kind of giveaway too, because he was telling me too, it's kind of underrated how the Iliopsoas deals with trunk rotation, and how most people, when they do trunk rotation, they use their legs entirely. And this is kind of the giveaway. So to answer your question, I would theorize, I would put out there, I'm not certain, but one of the ways you would evaluate on yourself if you're having issues is to try to do one of two things. Like a basic trunk rotation against resistance, or even like your basic kind of iron cross. This is where it goes to the mindfulness, and you kind of need a partner or someone who might know a little bit of, are you using your legs entirely to do that rotation, or are you initiating the move with your pelvis? Because if you're initiating the move with your pelvis, you're using the right muscles. You're using, what was that?
For rotation?
Yeah, if you're initiating with your pelvis, if you're driving a lot of force with your pelvis. So then the second thing, and then this is part of my rehab too, is a classic Paul Chek exercise. If you remember in the book, it's basically the you see every idiot do it wrong in the gym. I mean, only the YouTube viewers will see this. You tell me what you call these. But when you do these, and you have the cable machine.
Oh yeah, everybody does that stuff wrong.
Yeah, but anyway, if you do it right, if you completely keep your trunk stable and you do not move your hips at all, and you drive entirely.
I never let anybody move. And I
You do.
stagger the front too, yeah.
And then also too, you have to keep your arms completely straight, because it
Yep.
completely externally rotates you. If you can do that, if you're having trouble with 10 pounds and under, you have problems with it. And with me, I'm having problems at really low weights. And this is something I never used to have a problem with, but that's why I'm sure it contributes with my injury.
Yeah.
So some of this will fit nicely into the topic we're going to talk about in a little bit too. But like overuse injuries, it kind of begs the question that I never had that much problem with trunk rotation, or maybe I was doing it so wrong. But I think that going to your point about wanting to play soccer and needing to condition yourself accordingly, I think the same could be said of jiu-jitsu, because there is a lot of trunk rotation. There is a lot of core activation, hip strength, use of the psoas, use of everything down there of your core, and requires such a properly functioning core that if you're not doing things right, you're building an injury, and you're building an overuse injury, because you don't have the right mobility down there.
That, or you're gonna expose. Like I exposed the weakness which was I was being lazy at. Number one, the best times when I never got hurt, I was doing yoga twice a week and some more running. And I totally stopped running because of some related issues. And then the second thing is I haven't made time to do yoga. And I know I need to do that. And then you work the iliocostal. All the spinal erector muscles are really, really work very well, very, very well when you're doing yoga.
Yeah, definitely.
Chair pose, basic chair pose. If you're doing it right, you're holding yourself up big time. Any of the twists, any of that other stuff. Because I know I bought a yoga anatomy book and I've been reading it here and there, and it's always about the spine, all the muscles in the spine, all the muscles in the spine, all the muscles in the spine. Like they keep drilling it into you.
Right. I think that if when it comes, you're absolutely right. I think that when it comes to kind of a self-evaluation of this, if you're someone who sits a lot, if you're someone who has a problem with like a lot of internal rotation, forward head, of the internal rotation of the shoulders, like there always exists the possibility that this could be a problem. And the dead giveaway is if you have rib pain. That's usually going to be your dead giveaway. If you have all of that internal rotation, all of the other things like that, and then you have the rib pain, to me that would be your dead giveaway.
Well, I think this is also chicken and the egg questions. Like
Exactly.
did this did jiu-jitsu cause the injury, or did you already have a pre-existing condition? Did sitting a lot more cause the injury? Like you never really know. Um,
Right.
but it's an interesting thing, and I guess to be honest with you, it doesn't matter. It's
That's
all
exactly what he said to me too. He phrased it exactly like you just did. He said it's a chicken or the egg. If you go to 10 different physical therapists, they're all going to diagnose it the same, but they're all going to tell you got it for different reasons. But the point is it doesn't matter. You have it now. You're here.
and you learned a crap ton from it.
That was the most informative hour in 10 minutes I've had in quite some time. Let me tell you, especially when you go armed with questions, you know. And
Yeah, every injury has taught me a lot. So even though like this one sucks, but now I'm like, basically, if you're mindful and you get to the level where you're true with your body, like I know I shouldn't have played, but I didn't pay attention to it, and then I paid the price. It's like, oh, I shouldn't eat pizza and ice cream every day, but I want to, and then I'm gonna pay the price. You're gonna learn a lot whether the body shuts you down or you shut yourself down. You're gonna learn a lot. So
right.
it's a
And then
matter of getting everything in working order.
right. No, absolutely. And when you said that, it also reminded me of kind of a nice little bow tie to put at the end of the story is that in my case, he said to me, "You did a good job resting it for the proper time. You did a good job doing all that." And he goes, "But you do need to move because it's not going to get any better because in my case with the iliocostalis, that's not going to get stronger and in its place on its own. It
Yeah,
needs the stimulation, it needs the therapy, it needs what it needs." So I'm in the middle of a 4 to 6 week transitional program that incorporates, like I said, like front squats and things that are of that nature, but then also a lot of other physical therapy oriented things. He said he would be very surprised if I'm not back on the mat in a month. He said at least lay off another month, but just because you don't want any blunt trauma to the area. But the funny thing is that whereas my ribs had felt always just this weird discomfort and just this agitation by movement, now today after working with them yesterday, the aftermath is them feeling more like a sore muscle now, something like a familiar, like a mindful familiarity I have with that type of feeling, and almost like I worked out yesterday, it hurt, it's sore, not a like Jesus, this is a weird pain. And that to me was incredibly reassuring. And
nice.
so I'm very optimistic, I'm very happy, and just always know, like I echo exactly what Freud said, and always know when you need to get help too, like because you can know a lot, but it can be hard to put it together. It's in a way I think it's why doctors can't treat their own family. You kind of lose perspective.
Yeah, I think this would have been. You probably would have just rested it more and tried some other stuff, and then probably gotten injured again. Not on purpose, but it would have exposed something else, and then you probably would have been all right. Let me go to the PT guy. Figure this out.
Yeah, I just wish I went sooner. But other than that,
Yeah, but basically now like jiu-jitsu and other sports are gonna reveal your weaknesses, whether through injury or through prevention.
yeah, absolutely.
So now you know a little bit more about it. It's pretty.
It's very interesting. It makes you wonder, especially with professional athletes who chronically re-injure the same thing. Are they not addressing something, or is it just
It
bad
makes
luck?
makes me want to get a rumble roller now for my back.
What's the rumble roller?
The foam roller with the little spikes on it.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, all
You
these things are great. I mean,
can to get a little deeper in the iliocostal, like those type of muscles. I don't know.
yeah. I didn't get into that topic of foam rolling and that kind of activation with him a ton, um, but like he said, he was just really interested in getting it strong and active again. And I know that that plays a role, that kind of self massage, that self
Right.
care. But
Is the program he gave you geared towards making your your weaknesses stronger and not necessarily like, okay, this is how we heal the intercostal,
well,
the rib.
I'm waiting for him to deliver it to me. For now, that's gonna I'm supposed to get it tomorrow, and but for now,
Uh,
we had some parting thoughts on what I should do in the meantime. But he told me he would get it to me in 2 days, and Judging by the way he
Nice.
does evaluations, it's going to be very probably very personalized.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Yeah. And he said he'd do it for 4 to 6 weeks. He said that he trusts that I can do it on my own. He said I can come in anytime if I feel like I need it, but he said it's certainly you don't have to. It's not required. But
Nice.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting being in those environments, and it's very humbling, and it's also reassuring. But like at the end of the day, you have to like you have to really research all that on your own. You know, you have to
Yeah.
you have to be your best advocate because you know it's a private medical system we have. You know what I mean? That's not like it's not like there's a health czar that's making sure every person's okay. You know?
Well, usually what happens is an injury occurs, and then there's no mindfulness, so people just blah 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 blah. Injury occurs, then they have to go through. Hopefully, you get a good person, or you just get put through the channels of like, okay, how can we make the most money off of this person being hurt? Pills, surgery. Um, you know, was it reading an article because I have a client with an injured foot, and she was saying how she had the same injury, but she went to the doctor. The doctor said, okay, you need. They went from minimalist. They went from regular supportive shoes to minimalist shoes. They got hurt in the minimalist shoes. The doctor said, okay, go back to supported shoes and buy these orthotics. So they did it. It went away for a little bit, and then it started coming back. And then she was in the message board. She's like, I wish the doctor would have told me how to fix this, so instead of just getting the shoes and the support things, you know.
Right.
So it was a little disheartening to read that because that's usually what ends up people end up happening. You know, I went to the
You went where? I'm sorry. You're
I
breaking
went
out there.
to the store the other day, and it was a running store, and they had people on the machine to see where their foot works and everything else, and I was just.
That stuff is full of shit because those people are just $7 an hour workers.
It tells you, but it doesn't tell you how to fix it. It just tells you what shoe to get.
Right. But like I don't trust any of those people to analyze my stride because you and I could just go get a job in there. I mean, you and I would be good at it, but I'm saying like any
Train them on the machine. I think they train them on the machine. They don't train them. They don't know the muscles and everything. They just say, oh, you need this zone for shoe, and then they get on there. Because I saw the guy. It wasn't a stride one. It was actually he just had them stand on these shoe-like pads, and then the computer assessed where they were. To be honest with you, it's probably where they were weak, where their foot depressed the most.
Right.
So then off that, he told them what shoes to get. But I'm like, wow, they're not even telling them. They're not going to know. All they are is like a couple miles off an injury when the shoe breaks down, or you're just teaching them to get the new shoe. It's kind of like a drug addict or a drug dealer, like
Right. Yeah, exactly. You just keep giving them the next fix,
yeah, here's the new shoe. You're addicted to the shoe. You're not gonna, you can do this on your own because the longer you wait, the longer let's be serious. Like if you have a serious injury that you kind of never ever. You're 45. You have a serious knee injury. You've never paid attention to your body. You have no glutes. You have low back pain, stiffness. You're about a year away from feeling okay. You know what I mean?
Right.
You can train with somebody 3 times a week, and you're about a year away from being normal and like, oh, okay, I fixed myself. I fixed my knee. I fixed my back. In about a year, if you do things diligently, take care of yourself, you'll be like, okay, I'm around 10 is awesome. I'm about a 6. You could probably feel about 6. You know?
Right.
That's not if you don't pay attention to the sleeping, the eating, everything else. If you figure everything else out, you'd probably be at about a 7. But that last 3 is just more like diligently working on the small little issues. Like you don't know if your knee came from the ankle or from the hip, the pelvis. You don't really know where these things come from. So that whole year is just going to be, unless you get a really good PT person that's just going to, you know what, it doesn't matter. I'm going to break you down because you're so broken that I need you to get you back to square one. So it's an interesting, and it goes into the topic about how, overuse injuries, and again, in a way, the topic doesn't matter because, okay, so let's say you get that injury. Does it matter how you got it? To me, it does. To me and you, it does because you and I are hopefully in the preventative aspect of that. We don't want any of our clients to ever get that.
Right. That's where we differ from physical therapists, that they treat the symptoms and the injury after it happens. We're trying to make sure you don't get there,
Yeah.
you know. Or after you're done with that and you're healthy or seemingly
Yeah.
healthy. That's us.
Yeah, and that's why we have people do every single thing, every single factor you can control, from your food to your sleep to your water to your breathing to your meditation, every single thing you control it because it's going to tell you when your body's out of whack. I'm feeling a little bit of this here, I'm feeling a little bit of this there, I'm feeling a little bit of that. You're going to be able to communicate, and then you're going to be, all right, let's try this. I've learned a lot about, uh, you know, tendonitis, posterior tibialis tendonitis, K-tape in the last 2 weeks than I've ever known just because somebody got an injury, and I'm like, okay, let me figure out how to, do this. A lot of people don't pay attention to the muscles that are on the side of their leg that go down. Not just everybody cares about the Achilles, everybody cares about the gastroc and the soleus, but nobody cares about the side, little small muscles that attach down each side of the leg. Those things get stiff too. Put a lacrosse ball in there, you'll be dying in about 2 minutes.
Right.
I'm just touching it right now. I'm sore. Um, So it's something that, and I had to work through that because I had a little bit of a sore Achilles. As soon as I started paying attention to those muscles, I never had the same problem again. And I thought it was the shoe, I thought it was the cleats, I thought it was my old heel injury. No, it was just the fact that I was a little bit stiff on the inside and the outside of my, leading from the middle of the calf all the way down to the bottom of my foot. There's muscles there that nobody pays attention to. They evert or invert the foot. And I probably hadn't touched them for 40 years, to be honest with you. And I finally loosened them up, and it seems like I got everything balancing again, and I never had that pain. I haven't had that pain. So as soon as I fix that, I get this stupid hamstring thing.
Well, sometimes you get that. I mean, this is just speculation, but sometimes when you're loosening up old problems, things will move up the chain, like other things reveal themselves because
Oh, I agree.
your body got so used to moving like that. Now it's learning to have to move again.
I'm a big firm believer in that. I'm a firm believer that you know, when you uncover certain things, like for example, let's go low back pain, because low back pain is a very complicated thing.
Right.
It is and it isn't. But I believe once you start the process of that, you're going to be like, okay, I need to learn, I need to probably teach that. I was reading a good article and they said that, most people, their pelvis and their low back are one thing. So that's where a lot of pain comes from because it moves as one thing. So anytime it moves separately, like it should, you get a massive amount of pain. I threw out my back. Um, so for me, going through my process, I had to learn to separate everything. Everything needed to be redone. I had no butt muscles. I had no core. My hamstrings were super overactive. Um, just a whole host of things were going wrong. So when I started the process of undoing everything, it was, you think, oh, I'm injured again. No, even nowadays, if I do deadlifts, and you have the same issue too sometimes, if you move your back first, you're going to feel like you jacked your back up, right? Like you're like, oh. And
Yeah, but you see, yeah, but go ahead.
I still get that, but I realize now that that's just me. My back was so dominant, like my lower back was so used to doing the load because I never had any glutes that I would lift the weight with my lower back. So I keep telling everybody, I'm like, look, deadlifting is a skill. It's like learning to shoot a basketball. It's a very slight skill to learn to be able to use your hamstrings and your butt and your low back at the same, and your calves, your feet, everything all at the same time to lift that weight up at once, right? So I go, you're going to get that one where you fall back into an old pattern and your back's going to move first and you're going to tweak yourself. I go, that doesn't mean you can't do the exercise. It just means that you need to practice the skill. You need to have mindfulness about your hamstrings. You need to have hamstring control. And as soon as I tell people that, they're like, oh, I never knew that. That's why when I did deadlifts before, my back was killing me. Oh, yeah, because you were firing your lower back first.
Yeah.
A little bit about mindfulness about deadlifts. That was always an issue. I had that at the beginning when I was first learning deadlifts. I could tell that I was using my lower back, and I'm like, all right, I think I'm doing a deadlift. But it wasn't until I got a lot more mobility that I actually knew. I was like, okay, this is a deadlift.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. For me it was I never really have ever hurt my lower back doing a deadlift because I think I was overly cognizant of it, which might explain why I have these same problems with those spinal erector muscles. But um, mine was always legs, and then once the legs got it up enough, this was my cheat, was just all the upper body, which is kind of how you do it, but you need to kind of move very fluid. I was kind of missing the lower back involvement.
Well, think how much better your deadlifts are going to be now with stronger spinal erector muscles.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's kind of what I'm looking forward to testing out whenever I can do it. Um, yeah, it's going back to what you said for a second, that this is what the physical therapist told me too. He said, I don't care what anyone says, that your body is always going to find a way to get you through whatever you're doing.
Yep.
Like, in other words, it's always going to find a way to get you out of the harm and just work. Whether your body doesn't think about, oh well, I'm going heavy on Freud's hamstrings now because his core sucks or his glutes are shut off. It's just your body's only saying, hey, this works, but it doesn't think like, hey, if I keep doing this, I'm going to break Freud down in 5 years.
Yeah.
It doesn't think that, and that's why you need to kind of have a mindfulness.
I agree, because it's that's almost why, like, I don't know, there should be an article about how injuries are a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, I mean, depending on how severe the injuries are, yeah.
No, I agree. It's just and it's actually how you approach the injury, right?
Certainly, yeah.
Yeah, because if you approach it as a learning thing, for me, I had no choice. I was in back pain for 10 years. I was dying. I wanted to, I was drinking and all that stuff just to not deal with the pain.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know what it was. I felt like my body was just a mess. I go, my body's just a mess, and I know it's not the drinking, and I know it's not this, and I know it's like my body shouldn't be this stiff. So then you're like, let me try yoga. Why do I suck at yoga? Jesus, yoga, when I first started doing yoga, it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Some of the poses, I was like, this is the worst thing. This is the most painful thing. And I'm like, this isn't natural. This isn't right, that I shouldn't be this stiff. So finally you learn, okay, something's wrong with my body physically. Doctors wanted to cut me up, and I'm like, no, it's not I don't want to do that. So I just paid attention to it, and I taught myself how to do things, and then as I uncovered the onion, peeled the onion, you learn, okay, breathing. Oh, yeah, breathing. I didn't learn breathing until, I wish I would have known more about breathing and meditation when I first started my path, but you know what? It all came when it was supposed to come,
Yeah,
so
definitely.
about that. And then, overuse injuries, I think that really comes from a lack of mindfulness in terms of people just don't know their body, Like, how could you not know? Like, these people that, like I told you, my hobby is to watch people and how they walk and see their broken arches.
Right.
Like, how do you not know that's not how do you not know that's happening in your body? I just don't understand how that's possible.
Yeah, like the really hard, like the duck feet, on some people.
Yeah, I don't know. How do you not know that that's not happening? And I understand it's just not as important, but still, it's interesting.
Yeah, I kind of tend to agree with you in regards to the overuse thing being a sort of lack of mindfulness, because the reason a lot of those overuse things happen is because they weren't really firing right in the first place, because I think your body's meant to be able to take a lot of that stuff if you're kind of in line.
What I liked about that article is I've always wondered, like, okay, why did this injury occur? It's because your trainer did not do a good assessment of your mobility to begin with. Because if you're missing mobility, and I've seen it with a lot of clients who've gotten small injuries, the perfect example is usually I have a client who's stuck on only doing 30-minute sessions, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in the assessment and everything that I give, I'm like, okay, you got stuff that no way I can get done in 30 minutes, 1 hour a week. It's just impossible. Right. Hence why I tell people, 30-minute sessions are for people who are indestructible. No bad movement patterns, no mobility issues, nothing, because I could just take them and run them through a wall, metaphorically speaking, right?
Right.
I've seen now that I've been at this place for more than 2 years, I see when I make compromises like that with people, they eventually, 70% of the time they get these small little injuries that they're stuck, and I'm like, okay, now you have to take 2 months off, learn about being injured because you didn't want to pay attention to me to begin with, And I
Oh
don't
man.
I don't mean that with any malice. I'm just saying, like, I've seen it firsthand. I've literally seen it. I go, okay, I told you this was happening in your foot and your knee, and nobody paid attention. I only had an hour a week to kind of deal with that, and you didn't want to do any therapy stuff, so this is an injury now.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it too is having if someone comes in twice at 30 minutes, there's not a whole lot you can do if you're in that position of needing to kind of heal them.
Yeah,
Uh, you know, if even if they just did 1 hour once a week, it would make a huge difference. But it still probably wouldn't be enough because they'd still have to do a lot on their own, And that's where like, the trainer, in my opinion, um, has to be looked at when you're the individual as like a friend on the journey, but you still have to look out for yourself. You know what I mean?
yeah,
That you really have to kind of have that mindfulness. And if someone is giving you that layup of like, hey, I think you have problems with this. I think
yeah,
you have a bad hip adductor problem and it needs to be worked out because, this could end really badly. And I don't know what your situation is, but um, you know, if you can, I would highly recommend coming to see me X times, or for a little while or whatever it is. But you also need, at the end of that though, they also need to understand what goes along with that injury and how to treat it.
yeah. Because now it's at a point where, okay, now I have to do therapy with them, and I'm still only given the 30 minutes to do therapy with them. Which, if you went to a PT, they're not going to give you 30 minutes of therapy. You know what I mean? You're there for
Right.
an hour doing stuff. An hour and 10 minutes doing stuff. You never know. So it's very, it puts the trainer in a bad position. So, like I said, like I've mentioned a million times before, the best clients I've ever had are the ones that let you, okay, first 2 months we're working together, you're doing the limber 11 religiously. And then they finally get smart and say, I'm going to do this before the session so we don't have to do this. Fine, just do it before the session. I don't care. Gives me more time to do other stuff. But I want to see you do it for 2 months straight.
Right. Exactly.
The ones that are like, oh, they usually, when you don't get in the way of your trainer, that's why you have to be very diligent of if they're a good trainer. When you don't get in the way of your trainer, everything works smoothly. I've
Assuming
had
they know what
clients
they're
that do
doing.
that and that weren't able to. They were able, like, they couldn't. They had to use their knees to get, like, push their knees in to get up from the chair. Like, everything's just not firing right. 2 months of number 11. So basically, the first half hour of the session was number 11, just getting through that. Second half hour was a workout. Then they see, light years of change in just that. So it's awesome. It's awesome feeling.
Yeah, it is definitely,
So,
definitely.
anyways, overuse injuries, to bring it in perspective. You got the injury for a reason. Does it, like we said, if you're already at the stage where you got the injury, then it doesn't matter where the chain. All you know is that there was a, a weak link in the armor. You can find out where, the location of the injury gives you a kind of a map of where it could be. So then you can test it out and say, oh wow, I can't fire my hip muscles, or I can't my look how weak my arch is. You're going to start learning about these things, and then you can kind of not have to deal with it. Um,
It would seem to
you're not doing the shotgun approach of like, oh, okay, let me foam roll everything. You
it
know?
would seem to me that the term overuse injury is the wrong term. It's not accurate enough. It should be
Yeah.
um, you know, uh,
If you're overusing something with bad form,
yeah, that's like not as sexy of a word, but you know what I mean. It's like a overuse of something that was broken.
yeah, like my hamstring was an overuse injury because okay, Belichick says muscle injuries are usually from volume, too much volume, and then ligament and tendon injuries are too much intensity.
Right.
So I overused my hamstring because it wasn't ready, and it caused a massive tear in other areas of the hamstring because there was already a little bit of a tear. Technically, that's an overuse injury because the hamstrings were not in good condition to be able to do that. But yeah, it's like you said, it's a general, broad term that's like definitely not as sexy as like tore my hamstring or uh, well, I was missing space in my missing space in my Achilles, so I strained my slight strain in my gastroc. Those
Right.
are all overused because I see them as improperly overusing them or straining an area that was already strained because there was weakness in another area. But yeah, it does kind of get into a semantics issue that kind of gets everything a little confusing.
Yeah, and that's why people shorten things in the first place.
Yeah, but I bought one of those goniometers this weekend.
What is that the
It's
which one?
basically a protractor, and you use it to see what angles you have in your joints. So it's actually
Oh, yeah, I've always wanted to get one of those. I didn't know that's what it was called.
yeah, I just bought it. It's $10. I go, you know what? I'm gonna start doing this to people that I see the injuries in, and because I don't want to, I want to tell them, look, you're missing 10 degrees here in your ankle. What do you? Here's what your ankle should be. I can show them. Here's the range you should have. Show them. Here's what you have. Where do you think that's gonna go? If it can't get it in your ankle, where do you think that's gonna go? I'll tell you where it's gonna go. It's probably gonna go to your knee first. And do I want your knee to be? Your knee needs to be stable. Do I want it trying to find 10 more degrees anywhere? Hell no. That's an injury.
Yeah.
I think it helps me a little bit more with the math of all. Just saying, look, you're missing 10 degrees in your ankle, 15 degrees in your hip, your shoulders you're missing 20 degrees in your shoulder. Like, where do you think that's all going to go? That's all going to go to a big injury somewhere. Your body doesn't even know where it's going to go because you're missing all this range of motion. So I'm going to use it. I'm going to use that more as the argument for the Limber 11 or any sort of foam rolling or active release technique, anything along those lines. Because I think people have a hard time going, look, I can physically show you where you're missing range of motion. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I think it is a good presentation tool, definitely.
Yeah.
And evaluation tool, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think it'll help with mindfulness too. It's like, okay, what do you feel in your ankle? Oh, I don't know. And then, all right, let me show you. You're missing 20 degrees. What do you feel in your ankle? It's kind of stiff. I feel like
Yes, exactly. Some people learn that way, you know what I mean? And
I
that's
think if I can show you, hey, here's what you're missing. Let me see your squat. Oh my God, your knees are pulling forward. Why do you think your knees are pulling forward? Oh, here's why. Because you're missing 10 degrees in your ankle and 15 in your hip. That's why
right,
you're pulling forward. I think
right.
it lets you know, like, wow, this person's not messing around. So I've always known that I kind of do that casually with just checking the range of motion as you're watching the squat. Their knees are pulling. I know they need to do mobility. Can you touch your toes? No. Okay, I know you need to do mobility. But this is a little bit more like, here's the scientific proof, other than some guy going, hey, you need mobility.
Right. Indeed, indeed.
Sir.
To close it out on a interesting note, I don't know if you saw, but did you see that Red Bull had to settle a class action lawsuit?
Yeah, you can get your money back, right? Some money back.
Yeah, it just screamed Vibram to me because the guy in the lawsuit the way that they quote is it the plaintiff or whatever? But anyway, the way that they quote the guy who was kind of the lead in the lawsuit there, that he said, he thought that he would get these performance enhancing benefits implied by Red Bull gives you wings. That one to me was just so preposterous. First of all, I never thought I'd defend Red Bull, but that's insane.
But it's the same thing with the Vibrams. That's what, like you said, I was more pissed about that too. I was just like, God, I can't believe people are making money off this. And they both made this. I think Red Bull made a lot more like performance enhancement type claims.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're right too.
And they're
Yeah,
also tied in with a lot of sports. Red Bull sports, Red Bull this, Red Bull that. But it's the same as coffee. Everybody's the same.
yeah. I just thought it was funny. I thought it was you could have replaced Vibram with Red Bull and Red Bull with Vibram, and it would have read the same.
I was laughing. I was like, you know what? And you know what? The funny thing is, I don't think anybody knows about it. Where did you read about it?
It was on Reddit, and then it linked to an article on some news site. But yeah, I don't think it was very widely covered. The settlement was a lot, but it was like 13 million or something. It was a lot less than what I thought. I was like, oh wow, I thought it would be a lot more.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. I think I could have done it. I would just rather sue them for all the damage that all the Red Bulls I had did to me.
Yeah, that's the weird one. I don't know. People are so frivolous and I don't know.
But if you think about it, like these things are gonna be coming down the pipe because okay, so if you smoke a lot, basically cancer is if you smoke a lot, cancer is an overuse injury, right? Theoretically. If you drink a lot of coffee, adrenal fatigue is an overuse energy. Because I think everybody's gonna start paying the price for. Everybody is paying the price. Gluten, all that, like all this stuff that's inflammation. Those are overuse of that. Because why? We rely on bread for everything. You ever try to go without bread for 2 weeks?
Yeah. It's
You'd
I
be
mean
like, oh, what do you mean? I can't eat a sandwich? Like I can't.
I've done it for months,
Bread.
but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, at the beginning, you're like, okay, you're desperately trying to see what you can have that's not bread or bread-like.
Right. I brought a similar topic up the other day to someone. I said, and you and I have talked about this like way long ago, especially on the podcast. I know we have, but this puts it in a new perspective for me. Is that when the ratios in which you should be eating food. So in other words, an emphasis on vegetables and proteins, meat, whatever,
Yeah.
being chiefly amongst them is really hard to do if you rely on eating out a lot because no matter where you go, plates and dinners and lunches are dominated by carbohydrates, grain, or things containing gluten
Or
because
think
meat's expensive.
Yeah.
Like you get these baby portions, even at places that are on the healthier side of the spectrum,
Yeah.
they're going to give you a lot of rice, which is cheap. It's easy
Yeah.
to weigh it down. And then they're going to give you a lot of whatever is the side crap and maybe just a little bit of lettuce. But your meat serving is going to be maybe 5 ounces if you're lucky. And that is not enough, you
If I
know?
have to go, if I have to eat healthy by my work, I basically go to one place that's a salad place, and for me to get the salad that I want that's healthy for me, I have to get double avocado and double chicken. That's like a $15 salad,
Yeah, exactly.
and I'm like, that's ridiculous because I'm just paying for two shitty chicken breasts and one whole avocado.
Right. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's really insane in a
That's why
lot
I
of
like
ways.
Mighty Twins because I can go there and get a fat slab of brisket, and they barely give you any greens. You basically get pickles and coleslaw.
Yeah, but I mean that's the thing is that that's the funny thing about meat and protein and whatever, it's funny that you always have to remember that restaurants are a business that they might try to slant towards the healthy, but ultimately you're gonna have to be the one to really be the last
That's
spot
why I
checker
don't.
on your
Yeah,
health.
that's why I don't really respect expensive Italian restaurants because I'm like, that's cheap to make. I don't care if somebody's making it by hand.
Yeah, I mean I very it's blasphemy to say, but I very rarely eat out Italian anymore because I know I'm like it depends on the dish. If they're just gonna make you pasta, then yeah, you can make that at home for like three
Yeah,
dollars.
pasta with meat sauce. You can make that at home for $3 for 4 nights. You can have it there all set.
Yeah, exactly.
If
But
it's like osso buco or something, that's different.
yeah, exactly. When you start getting fancier, that's for sure.
Or pizza, like there's all that expensive pizza place. That stuff is cheap to make, especially if they don't put any of the cheese in the. They just put a lot of bread, a lot of sauce, a little bit of cheese. That's how they.
Right.
That's how they save money. You're like, wow, this is a expensive pizza.
Yeah, man. Pizza and all that stuff is delicious, but the problem is, like we've talked about on many podcasts past, is that you eat too much of that stuff, that imbalance is created, and your gut is just fucked.
I'm learning so much about the shifting of the probiotics and everything else just from changing my own probiotics and playing around with charcoal and the timing of reintroducing the probiotics. It's all very interesting stuff.
Yeah,
And basically, no matter what it comes down to, is just watch your ratios, man. 80-20. Everybody's right when they say that. 80% good, 20% bad. Just enjoy it, and then take care of yourself. Let that ratio shift, because once you shift that ratio for about a year, you're gonna feel fantastic.
this is true. This is true.
This is
Well,
true.
tell us how fantastic you feel at functionalmeatheads.com.
Hit us up. Let us know how you're doing. Keep us in the loop. Any topic you want. If you're dealing with a nagging injury, it's time to investigate and find out what's going on.
And I'm in hardcore study mode, so if
Yeah.
you need your textbook definition and treatment of all this stuff, you
Hit us up.
hit us.
Hit us up. Tell us what you've been having, what you've been ailing, and maybe we'll do a podcast on it, on the specific injury or something similar to it. But it keeps us sharp, and it's good to kind of, if you don't do it through us, do it through a message board. If you don't do it through a message board, just kind of ask local PT people or ask your trainer at the gym. But definitely keep us in mind, because that's what Mark and I love to do.
Indeed, indeed. Check us out on the usual channels. You know where to find it, Stitcher and iTunes. We'll talk to you next week. Have a good one, people.
Peace. Watch
Now
regular.
it's time for the woo-off. Did you know WWE was in Brooklyn last night? I didn't know that.
Nah, I knew, but I was not gonna pay.
Anyway, take care, everybody. Time for the woo-off.